Well, perhaps the biggest theme over here in Davos 2023 is the need to move towards sustainable economic growth, which means sustainable environmental growth. The world is deeply fragmented now, and perhaps one of the key areas where the world can be less fragmented is if there is a genuine application of standards when it comes to the environment and sustainable growth. We've got two wonderful individuals who look at this from a professional standpoint, Bernhard Lorentz and Shubhranshu Patnaik with Deloitte. Delighted to have both of you. Thank you very much for being with us. Shubhranshu, let me come to you first.
Sure.
And why don't we just walk and talk. Indian corporates increasingly see the importance of sustainable models in terms of climate as affecting their business. How is that the case?
Well, there are two aspects to it. One, of course, is the pace of transition and how corporates could be caught out if they're not changing fast enough. There would be compliance issues, there would be regulatory issues that they could get mired in. The other is the business potential aspect, right? So if you actually take advantage of it, and Deloitte actually put out a report called The Turning Point, which was modeled out for Asia Pacific and for India in particular, which basically said, if India is not taking advantage of climate change, then we could be impacted in terms of our GDP by almost 35 trillion by 2070. But if you were to take advantage of it, our GDP could actually grow by 11 trillion, right? So it is that aspect, which is if you take advantage as corporates, as government, and be part of the transition, then you can actually gain economically, and corporates obviously would have a significant business case.
There's an interesting number, 57% of Indian companies calling it a top 3 priority. Now, this wasn't the case 3 years back, right?
Oh, it's a number 1 or number 2 boardroom discussion anywhere you go.
Right.
So it is definitely a priority.
Bernhard, from a larger macro standpoint, it's all very well to be talking about corporate interests, but when it comes to actually transferring green technology, and this is a discussion that's been going on for years, who pays for it?
I think it's a common challenge for both the global north and the global south, and that's why we have an ongoing discussion in the G20 about financing this development of use of new technologies. If we look, for example, at the biggest challenge that we are facing, which is the energy supply, in particular for India, of course, we have to consider that we basically know the technologies. It's really about broad investments. I just learned about the ambitious planning for the rollout of renewables, and hydrogen will play a major role, and I think it's really about adopting them now, making the right investments, and sharing the costs, of course.
And tell us a little bit about some of those key green technologies. Green hydrogen is one of them.
Yes.
It's prohibitively expensive now.
Yes.
So how does one actually get beyond that issue?
I think we have seen this before. I mean, if I'm from Germany, if we look at how Germany was successfully bringing down the cost curves of renewable energies, which was, I think, a service for the world, we will see a very similar development now with a strong regulation in the United States, IRA, putting a lot of money in this market. And we will also see in the next days to come strong support on the EU level that both will bring down the cost curves for green hydrogen. We will see the infrastructure, many investments in this. We will see the manufacturing of electrolyzers being absolutely decisive. And if the cost curves go down, this will be more affordable, and this will be certainly one of the key solutions also for India.
One of the areas, Shubhranshu, where we've seen a real transformation in India is in the EV space. Auto India, the Auto Expo this time around, just a couple of days back, was just about that, the transition to electric vehicles. But here too, there's that price hurdle. Until the cost of batteries come down, it becomes unrealistic for millions in our country, certainly. So how do you see that evolving in our transition to being a cleaner country and a cleaner economy?
See, as far as India is concerned, Vishnu, interestingly, because we import the fuel mostly, it actually makes sense even today. Commercially, on a total cost of ownership basis, EVs make more sense than ICE engines even today. But the issue, of course, is getting the infrastructure out and being bold about our vision. We already have a 30% new sales by 2030. I think there's room for being bolder, if I may. And if you are able to transit, let's say public transport first and then passenger vehicles will follow, we can get the ecosystem moving faster. Certainly for in-city transportation, EVs are the solution. It has a twin effect. It'll decongest our cities from a pollution standpoint, tailpipe emission standpoint, and of course it is greener. So to that extent, there is a real opportunity there.
And yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump on this because this is absolutely mission critical. If we get the EV cycle going and really increase the sales, that will make a huge difference. We see a lot of investments going in this space, particularly in infrastructure. Again, in the IRA in the United States, which is a game-changing act for the world, and in Germany now, where we're leading, as you know, the transportation business with a strong automotive industry. The same discussions about infrastructure, about charging structure, but I think we will get this done. This is something that we have to discuss in the G20 because we need common rules, common investments, common understanding. I think Prime Minister Modi has a very good agenda for this.
But Bernhard, let me ask you a very basic question. Why do batteries for EVs cost as much as they do? Because sales have gone up around the world, certainly in the West. Why has there been no rationalization of the cost of batteries? We've been having this discussion for the last 5 years?
That's right, and there have been rationalization. If you look at the cost curves, they have been down nearly by 50%. They're still high, but I think we will see really an acceleration in the decrease of costs. If we look in the investment side, we're doing just a study on this, where in the world heavy investments goes into battery. If I just look in my country, if I look what we see now under IRA, where we see tons of billions of money going into strengthening the battery industry, we will see game-changing moves in the next 5 years. I'm very confident with this.
Sure. And Shubhranshu, just returning to the Indian economy, in simple terms, and I know you've come up with lots of statistics on this, how does a cleaner corporate sector make sense for our overall vision of economic growth? We talk about $1 trillion, $5 trillion economy. How does getting clean actually help get us there faster?
As I said, I mean, there is a real opportunity of economic advantage, gaining economic advantage, both diplomatically as well as economically, from going green faster. Because it's a real opportunity for India. I mean, it's a real opportunity to lead on, let's say, batteries. Just the scale of demand in India would be an opportunity from a manufacturing standpoint, from a supply chain standpoint. It's the same for hydrogen as well. We have great ambitions of positioning ourselves as a regional superpower in hydrogen. And it is for domestic demand first before you start to think about exports. If you're able to do that, then you are actually reaping the economic dividend of transformation faster. And so therefore the bolder vision is a must, and that's what the government is insisting on in that sense.
Can you tell us or share with us, your experience in changing mindsets among corporates? If we were to have this discussion 5 years back, they would perhaps not be as keen.
Yeah.
But there are global phenomena now. I mean, global warming is real. Weather patterns are changing. People are worried about the impact on their work. So how are these factors, the increasing floods, extreme temperatures, how are these some factors which corporates consider as they say, no, we need to now get serious?
Yeah, I think so there are two aspects to it. One is, where the supply chain and the markets are global. One looks at the lighthouse companies to take a lead, because nobody wants to move first and then be caught out because you've moved faster, you've added cost to your, to the production process, and there's no market for that. So you look at lighthouse companies. So you still have some hard to abate sectors which will stand on the, on the fence and expect lighthouse companies to take a lead. But on most of the others, I think the transition has happened. At least mindset transition has happened. India, of course, is services, which is a big part of the play. They have transitioned dramatically well. Most of them have gone RE100, the pledged EE100, all of that. Except for the hard-to-abate sectors where there is a technological challenge, as Bernhard will tell you as well. Most of the other sectors in India have actually started to look at it positively and have set themselves pretty ambitious goals of transition. So we are encouraged by that. And the hard-to-abate sectors, I think, will also transit as we move ahead.
Sure. There's a bit of a duality. If you talk about India, for example, on the one hand, we've got these great ambitions in terms of clean energy. Solar power is booming in India. Our national grid is being cleaned up. On the other hand, there's this huge reliance on coal. And there is no getting away from it at the moment, because it's a large country, and the energy requirements are going up every single year. So how does one actually make a complete transition? I mean, is it at all realistic is the point?
I think it's realistic, and we've gone through this. We discussed this, my colleague and myself, this morning. We have gone through this in Germany. We go through this in many of the other European countries at the moment, and it makes sense to look at those case studies. It has aspects of just transition. You have to make sure that you take your people with you, but I think it's really possible. And there's a strong business case. The production of PV energy is so incredible cheap if you do it in the right way and you roll out. And I like the ambition that to become by 2030 with 50% of renewables. I think there's much more in it, and I think that's what I would recommend.
So Vishnu, we already are the fourth largest in terms of RE, right?
Yes.
In the globe. And we don't have an intermediate fuel to depend on, right? So we're making a very bold transition from coal to all the way to renewables. And this is a really ambitious statement. If you're saying 500 gigawatts by 2030, probably much more if we add the green hydrogen onto the equation, then it's a very, very bold transition. But yeah, I think we can go faster, that's for sure. Something that we need to look at. The grid aspects have to be looked at. Storage will all come back into the equation clearly, and storage is a big part of that equation. So yeah, we will have to make that, but transition, we'll have to make that leap of faith. But as I said, there is no intermediate fuel that we have. So therefore, coal has to be also managed carefully.
Sure.
Because that is our flexing mechanism. That's our bank at this point in time in the way we transition.
Bernhard, one final question to you. Storage. That's so important, storing energy. Now, you see, if you want more energy, your batteries keep getting larger, by and large. Of course, now there's new technology, lithium ion is more bang for the buck, as it were. But ultimately, the ability to store energy and transmit it effectively, right, with low transmission and distribution losses is so important. Is that a technology hurdle that the world has hit?
No, I don't think it's a hurdle. It's really making some tough choices at the moment and making the right investments. If we look, you spoke about the EV spaces earlier. If we look what we develop in the EV space at the moment, that we have cars who can serve as your bunker of energy for a while and the bidirectional use, this will make a huge difference. If we look at the Indian market in particular, with decentralized energy structures that we need, because grid infrastructure will be a challenge over the next 20 years, that's certainly part of the solutions. We have all the water examples that we have also in India with strong opportunities to bunker energy and store energy. I think it's really about making a plan now, and I know that India are working on this a lot with international partners, and really then rolling out and really being very, very consequent in execution. I always say strong standards make strong companies, and this is about standard that we do now and you decide now.
All right, wonderful speaking to both of you. And that, as I said, and let's wrap it up with that, is the focus at one level at Davos 2023, the rail transition. The question is how soon will it happen? And certainly at one level, who's going to be paying for it? Lots of questions there. Perhaps we need more answers going forward.